Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting ao-gp.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the theta meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to ao-gp.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, and welcome to another Independent Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. This is going to be season 7, episode 5. We've taken a little seasonal break with Thanksgiving and Christmas. We wanted to come back before the end of the year and get one in before the new year. And we've got a bunch of neat shows coming up.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everybody listening to this after the 1st of January. It is December 29th. And I am here with Quenton Stroud and Scientology girl, Lisa Burke. And this one is going to be entitled Other Practices and Independent Scientology. So without any more preamble, Quenton, you wanted to get rolling on this. So I'm gonna have a viewpoint. Lisa's going to have a viewpoint. Quenton's going to have a viewpoint. And I'm the career independent Scientologist. That's my viewpoint. And what did you say, Quenton? What was your viewpoint?
I am a career other.
Other.
I'm a spiritualist. I'm a spiritualist. Yes.
Okay. And Lisa?
And for me, it was basically just how I went from going as a Scientologist within the last 4 years, and that was my stable datum, to, taking a little bit of a break and exploring other areas, other practices, and how that has impacted me.
All right, Quenton.
Absolutely.
What did you want to say?
Well,
you had some stuff going there real quick.
Well, as we were preparing for the show, we just got into a little chat, and I totally saw where Scientology girl was coming from, because she was basically saying that how her journey had been tapping into other ideas, other concepts, other ideologies when it comes to spirituality. And for me, I started off with very, very conservative Christian, right? So very conservative Christianity. Bible was a part of my everyday experience. I kid you not. We had to read devotional Bible every morning. Wow. Before going to school. So it was something that was definitely a part of what we were doing. And so coming from that background, when I discovered Scientology at 19 years old, it was like a breath of fresh air, because I didn't really start to understand the Bible until well, that's not true. I started to understand the Bible a lot better when I started looking at it from a more spiritual perspective and less religious perspective. And then when I found Scientology, it added the bridge, and it added a route, it added a way, a path. You know what I mean? When before it was all about believe, hallelujah, I believe.
Yeah.
And then it went into, now if you do this, this will be the result. And if you do that, that'll be the result. And you just keep going up the bridge. And that made a lot of sense to me, because most people are just, walking around like a sheep without a shepherd,
Yeah.
And so that's what Scientology actually did for me. It brought my Christology, it brought my mysticism and spiritism, and it brought all of that together and said, now this is what you can do with it. That's how it worked for me.
Wow. Yeah. I agree when it comes to the whole Christian thing, because as a lot of people know, I used to be a Christian when I was younger. I did write a blog post in which I felt that it was very cult-like, in terms of, the crazy sort of stuff that my family would, the expectations, like things like Pokemon was not allowed in the place. Posters on the wall was like, posters on the wall was like
Smurfs,
forbidden.
you couldn't have no Smurfs.
Yeah,
They
all
demon.
of that stuff, anything like that was, I mean, it got to a point where seashells, because seashells are horned, right? They were like, no, no, you can't even have that in the house. Yeah,
You're kidding.
Wow,
no, I'm 100%, yeah. Things like
that's something.
things like little frog figurines and owl figurines were seen as bad. I have no idea why, because I mean, God created these creatures if you believe in that, Christian thinking. So yeah, it was pretty messed up. So for me, I lost that religion like for years, and a part of me obviously had some resentment towards family and stuff because of it. But then later on, after I found Scientology, knowing my background with Christianity and stuff like that, it really did broaden my understanding of all these concepts in the Bible and stuff to, like you said, less religious, more spiritual. Um, so yeah, that was one of the things. But throughout my break, I went into several different things. Some of them, I have a list here, like Hermeticism, power of now, Christianity, shadow work, psychology, neuroscience, and all of that. And honestly, there were things in it that made me kind of I don't know, dispersed, you can say, because I had this base understanding of Scientology, and I'm very thankful that I actually did Scientology first before going into all of this, because they did expand my understanding on these things. I was always using Scientology to understand these other principles and stuff. Um, but ultimately, in the end, I felt a lot more dispersed, like my stable datum with Scientology just wasn't there. And I think the reason why Scientology is such a stable datum for me is because, well, you it's operating off of the laws of the physical universe. And so if you're like, I mean, you don't get much more natural than who you are as a being, kind of thing. And I know that, Satan is different from the physical universe, but it's still, connected in some way. Um, so yeah, that was just my experience. I'm not saying that you can't do other practices, but what I am saying is that if you do, be careful, because if you try and understand too many things, I feel like some people, it can cause some sort of adverse thing where it shakes your stable datum. Now that said, I didn't fully explore everything like for a long time. It was just maybe within the last year. So that's got to be taken into consideration as well. Whereas you, Quentin, I think you've been doing this for years now, so you
Yeah,
have
30
a,
some odd years. Yes.
yeah, you really have a full understanding of it.
Yeah. And what about you, Jonathan? Because your journey is very different from both of ours.
Well, I like vanilla. I don't want any sprinkles on it. I don't want any chocolate on it. I just want a vanilla bean ice cream. In the US, it's
Mm.
Breyers is my favorite vanilla ice cream.
Oh, yes.
Breyers is the thing. So, and what I mean by that is, as an analogy, is I'm not real familiar with the Bible and biblical references. You've been really good about quoting particular references to me, and it's interesting to me that when you mention things, I tend to correlate it with other things in Scientology. A lot of them are similar, and I think I've mentioned this in a couple other podcasts. Is Hubbard LRH was probably or is the best distiller of information, and Scientology is an amalgamation of many different things. And I would like to make the distinction that when we're talking about other practices, we're not necessarily talking about mixing things into independent Scientology. We're just talking about
Right.
well,
What exists, really, the things that exist.
right,
Right.
what exists, and if you're looking into
What's out there?
yeah, because LRH, I mean, there's countless lectures that he mentions. These, the psychology talks about Wundt, he talks about Papa Freud, all of these guys, and Korzybski. I mean, when you get into data, the data evaluators course and things like that. So that he read these things. And who was it I was talking to? Oh, it's one of my PCs yesterday as an example. The church banned, and we mentioned this in another podcast, the church banned Gods of Eden by William Bramley, and they banned Bill Cooper's book, Behold the Pale Horse. And these
What
books,
church? The Church of Scientology or
Church of Scientology published goldenrod that you were not allowed to read these books while on lines in the church.
I love Beware the Pale Horse. Love that book. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't see reading other books as another practice. And I wanted to bring that up to me because you're getting opposing viewpoints. And to Lisa's credit, she looked, and you raised your hands as like in a raise the roof when she mentioned it. Let's touch on Hermeticism if we can for a minute, and how those you guys find that they correlate. Lisa, what do you have to say on that?
Okay, well, for me, when the Hermeticism was kind of like the first one that I had, went into after Scientology. And I think the reason why was because I found it so relatable, because Hermeticism, if you look at the 7 laws, they are natural laws. And so, there's things like cause and effect in it, that kind of thing. And it's all got to do with things that you'd find naturally in the physical universe. And by understanding Scientology, it just becomes so obvious and natural that you'd understand Hermeticism and the principles with it. And there's no, strict thing like you have to believe in a god or anything like that, one of the things, I should actually pull up the 7 laws, but one of the things that I remember.
I got them right here too.
Oh, do you? Okay. One of the things that I remember is, I think it's the first one, where all is mind, everything is mental. And I think
that's right.
I think that kind of goes in with, in Scientology, like sort of, I don't know, simulation kind of thing. Like the physical universe isn't real. It's an isness, but it's not an as isness. Like there's the theta universe, and then there's what's apparent in front of us.
Right, because you have for anything to persist, there's a lie behind it. So there's a constant alter isness going on to have the isness.
Right.
Is that what you get out of it, Quenton?
Well, and also that everything is postulated. Everything is a postulated reality.
Yes.
And so that all is mind simply says that, according to the Hermetic law, simply says that everything that you see, touch, taste, smell, sound, everything of the physical universe is a condition of mind, of postulate, of consideration.
Yeah.
And therefore things can therefore be changed or altered by altering your postulate, by altering your mind on the matter, your consideration on the matter. And so when if a person were to study Scientology and really get the axioms, right? Really get the axioms. I would even say the first 10, right? When I read the axioms, I was blown away, because it really echoes, and I believe that LRH might have even looked into some of this stuff, like just really, like you said, distilled it down, but really get into a point where you understand how your postulates work, how everything is mind, how everything is an unfoldment of postulates. It's perfect.
Yeah.
The law of mentalism.
Yeah. And then there are others. Just looking here quickly.
I'll say this, the one that stands out to me as it relates to, you mentioned cause and effect, that every cause has an effect and every effect has a cause.
Yeah.
Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized.
Yeah.
There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes this law. Yeah. Right? So that everything is a law of cause and effect. And so when you understand that, that's the communication formula.
Yeah. Like the first
and that communication let me say, I'll just say this real quick. And that communication can, as is any condition,
Yeah,
right? Any
yeah,
situation with
yeah.
the right communication.
Absolutely. And I was going to say something as you were talking about the cause and effect thing. Something that blew my mind, and I'm still sort of like I can't get over it, is when I first heard that every problem has a solution, has a solution, and so it goes. And when I looked at it and I really like thought about it and discovered, okay, so you know, have a meal. Okay, so you had the meal, that's the solution. Then you got the problem of cleaning up. And then once you've cleaned it up, it's solved. And then, you know, it just continues. And so with that, you know, you can look at cause and effect as well.
Mhm. Yeah. And it goes down to the basics of every part of our lives.
Yeah.
And so for me, with my journey of spirituality, from Christianity to magic, mysticism, metaphysics to Scientology, and I've been a Scientologist for the last 22 years. It all is it's all saying what we know to be truth
Yeah.
in different ways. Now, I do agree with you, Lisa, when you said that if you're not um, if you're not grounded or rooted in one way, one practice, and then you try to go and branch out to all these other things, it can be a very dispersive kind of thing,
Experience.
right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it can really spread you kind of thin. So
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. How was your experience with that? Like, what did it feel like as you having Scientology being your stable datum, and then you kind of exploring some of these other practices?
Well, like I said, it was very dispersing, but there were some things that were better than others. So, for example, in my list, right? I'm just going to pull it up. So Hermeticism, like duck to water, everything was fine with that. Neuroscience for me was also helpful because it dealt with science. So I do believe that you know, there is a relationship between dopamine, serotonin, and all of that stuff. That's just something that I think is true because of my own experiences. That said, I do not believe that you need to cure the brain with medication. I believe you can do it all naturally. Just do basic things like, you know, walks, nature, um, eat nutritious foods, that kind of thing. So you don't need to resort to going to, you know, psychotherapy and then getting all that crap. um,
Mm.
but some of the things that didn't work for me was obviously Christianity, shadow work, and psychology. And the reason why they didn't work for me was because, well, firstly, Christianity is other determined. So it's like, you know, God's going to fix your problems instead of you fixing it, depending on your definition. But for the general population, that's the belief. Um, then you get to shadow work. Now, shadow work can sort of seem helpful, and I'm just going to quickly explain what it is. It's basically, well, how I found out about it was this book on TikTok. Yes, I'm mentioning TikTok again, but it was this book on TikTok, and they recommended, you know, you go through the book and you write down the stuff, the prompts that they give you, and it's all sort of questions that make you think about your inner child, makes you think about your past, things that, you know, unhealed traumas and everything. Now, I didn't see the thing completely through. So maybe for some people it is a good thing, but what I got from it is that it just made me feel a bit like a victim, you know, because you're going through all those things. You're at a there's no way you can do that book without being in grief, you know, because it's sort of like a loss of havingness. And if people don't know in, you know, Scientology, for example, how to key themselves out again, that pain can linger with you and keeps you at a low vibration. So I didn't really enjoy that.
Can I jump in on the shadow work thing? Because I totally agree
Absolutely.
with you. So what I tell people is that Dianetics is Scientology's version of shadow work, where
Mm,
you're going back on
yes.
your track and you're fully confronting these traumas. You're fully confronting these incidents. And you confront them not to, I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't like this feeling. Da, da, da. You might, dramatize,
Mm,
but you're fully confronting them in order to integrate them.
yeah.
This is why when LRH says when you clear an engram, when it clears, it's now refiled into your analytical mind. So
Mm,
when my father was murdered, and the tragedy of my father's murder and all the engrams that got locked in and happened with that whole thing, when I started doing Dianetics, I did it not to get rid of my father's murder and what I went through, concerning that, because it was something that I needed to go through in order to heal. But I did Dianetics in order to refile it and to release that charge.
yeah.
So Dianetics really is shadow work.
Yeah. With the exception of, I think, when you do shadow work by yourself, you're only just really scratching the surface, and you need another terminal to be able to, help you along through it. And it's still completely self-determined. It's just
Yes,
that, you need the aid sometimes.
that's totally true. I recommend if a person wants to look into whatever. Dianetics, hands down, helped me in so many ways,
Yeah.
right? It helped me in so many ways. And so, and it was very rapid. The
Yeah.
other thing is it was very rapid.
Right.
Um, Going some of these other practices, it can be lifelong.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be doing this stuff for your entire life.
Yeah.
Dianetics, we went in and within an hour, 2 hours, that incident had no effect on me anymore. That
Right.
felt really, really good.
Yeah.
And so, it just depends on how a person wants to approach a thing. But for those of you who are listening to this podcast and have experienced some of the things that we're talking about, some of the from Christianity and others, and you say, "Hey, how does this fit into my journey?" What I found is that Scientology and Dianetics cut through all of the spiritual red tape. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It
Yeah.
it no longer made it a mystery, and it made it into a certainty of how I could handle whatever needed to be handled.
Yeah.
And that's what felt good. Now,
Yeah.
mysticism, which I identify as a mystic, mysticism is about embracing the mystery. So it's a
Mm,
little bit different.
yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
for sure. I looking at my list, I saw one, and this is something that I'm a little bit resistive about sharing, but I'm going to share anyway because, um, well, we're here now. So I
Get it now.
actually, yeah, I actually started doing a little bit of psychotherapy this year, and just having a comparison and stuff. And what I found, now, just for the record, I didn't use any medication. It wasn't like that. It was
Yeah.
just talk therapy. But what I found was that it was just like going in circles, and I think that's how they keep a person going back the whole time. um, is nothing ever changes. There's no goal progress or anything like that. It's just letting you talk about your problems, evaluations about them, and then, and let me add that something that I learned in Scientology, which was very good for me, was that even positive things can be an evaluation. So if somebody, if your auditor, for example, is agreeing with you that that trauma is real, that's not going to solve anything, because instead of making you responsible and trying to raise you up, you're staying stuck in that victim mentality, and that person who's trying to help you is validating that you have a right to feel that way. Now, I'm not about shaming victims at all. I understand it's a real thing. However, it is much better to empower people than keep them stuck in that pain. And I feel like with psychotherapy, they try and keep you stuck in that pain. Because honestly, anybody that goes to a psychotherapist is basically a cash cow, because the system is designed to keep that money going. So anyway, with my experience, it was just a constant, like, talk about your stuff. And I didn't go a lot. I quickly realized that this was not designed to make a person feel better. It was just to, like, almost like Dianetics in a way, except with no goal, was just to scratch the surface and then, like I said, keep you stuck in that loop. And that was my experience. And I left shortly after joining.
Hmm. Yeah. I'll say this. I was in psychotherapy for after a very, very abusive relationship. I went to a
Mm,
psychotherapist for about a year, and she was very, very good. She really, really helped me with coping mechanisms
mm,
and things to help me get through those triggering moments
mm,
and stuff like that. And when when I could um, utilize some of those things did help me cope and get through it.
yeah.
What I loved about LRH is that LRH made it very clear that we ain't just about coping,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like we're about
Yeah.
we're about resolving those things that really keep you in your junk. And so, give a quick story. I was in an abusive relationship. I was dating someone after the relationship and after a year of therapy, and over a year of therapy. And one day we're in the bed watching television, and something was funny. I can't remember what it was, but we started kind of laughing and joking and tickling each other. So we tickling, tickling, tickling. And my 2D was like, "You play too much. You play too much." And the way I heard it was exactly the way I heard it in my past relationship.
Mm,
And so I literally seized up like this, like my body
yeah.
clamped up. My fists were clenched like this, like I was protecting my face from
Yeah.
about to be hit,
Yeah.
right? And I stayed that way for about, I don't know, 30 seconds, maybe a minute. And so next thing I know, I heard, Q, what's going on? And I came to and I was like, oh shit, like I still got this junk affecting me
Yeah.
after a year or so
Yeah.
of psychotherapy. The next year, 2006, I went straight into Dianetics and handled that. Ain't never had a problem since
Yeah.
that abusive relationship.
Wow.
And it was able to do it on an afternoon sitting in Piedmont Park in Atlanta, Georgia. Was able to do Dianetic session, and that one thing, and it was actually it wasn't one thing. It was a chain.
Yeah.
I was in one abusive relationship this lifetime, but it was a chain that went back, back, back.
Yeah.
And when I had with the third back and handled that incident, the whole chain blew.
Yeah.
Had no idea. It was something that affected me 3 lifetimes ago. Anyway,
That's amazing. That's really amazing. Wow. Yeah. And
so yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, and that's really something. I feel like the stuff that I mentioned specifically, they they're coping skills. So yes, people are going to have a few wins on them, but they're not like Dianetics and Scientology, where it's something that rids you of that stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. Now, so talk to me about this because you mentioned. I'm sorry, Jonathan. You got something to say?
Well, I wanted to mention, and it's something that as I go on, and my ARC, my KRC improves with auditing and training, and the more I audit people and everything. One of the things that I see here on Earth, you guys were talking about coping, and a lot of the things that you see on Earth that are, how shall I say this? It's as good as you're going to get on this planet, type of a thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
is as good as you're going to get is okay, cope. And then you do something with Dianetics or Scientology, and you're rid of it in an hour, 2 hours time, a particular thing, especially with Dianetics, because you can use Dianetics on practically anything. So it's as good as you're going to get. There are a lot of things that in Dianetics and Scientology, not just, it's not that the bar is raised one notch, it's raised multiple notches to handle something. And it's one of these things that you don't see in other walks of life at all. It's just, that's the best technology we have, type of a thing. That's all I wanted to say about that.
No, I totally get that. And now this is where it goes deep for me. So So as Lisa was talking about Christianity as a religious practice, um, uh, the Hermetic laws as a way of philosophically looking at the world and the natural laws and things of that nature, law of polarity, law of cause and effect, law of vibration, that kind of thing. Then looking at psychotherapy as a way of coping and trying the best you can with what you got to get
Yeah.
through your day, because shit happens. And so people kind of go at it from different angles. Um, then we go into magic. And then we go into like actually the manipulation and the shifting of energies and things of this nature. And everything LRH talks about, in my opinion, really teaches us how to use our ability as thetans, our theta perceptions and theta abilities to make these things happen. OT abilities. I don't know what other word to call it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we've got to look at it that we're not just part of the physical universe, but there's a whole other, universe that is out there. Well, in us, or whatever you want to call it, but and so if you look at it in terms of that, then I don't know an awful lot about magic, but I do know that we can maybe interpret certain things in one way, but it's really just a vast way of saying that we're OT and we have these abilities and stuff like that. That's so whether you
LRH sums it up. Oh, sorry.
no, you go ahead, it's okay.
I'm just reading here in the outline of therapy. LRH sums it up, page 6. He says that, so you say it in the second echelon. Thought is a static of unlimited capabilities, which has itself no wavelength, no space, and no time. It is impinged upon the physical universe, which is space, time, energy, and matter. The mission of thought is survival in the physical universe, and in order to do this, it is affecting a conquest of the physical universe. That right there.
Mm,
That to me is the crux of everything we're seeking to accomplish as spiritual beings having a human experience,
yeah.
right? The impingement of our thought upon the physical universe in order to affect a conquest of the physical universe, so that we're no longer the effect of it, but we're now cause of it to whatever degree we can be or seek to be. So this to me, he calls it the second echelon of Scientology. The second echelon of Scientology is what I've been in. I'm rocking with that 100%.
Well, and that's like I was saying earlier about the distillation of things, because when we talked about LRH's experience in the Love and Rockets episode, and where a lot of this information comes from is this is my personal opinion on it, is that he looked at this stuff and he said, I think there's more to this, and there's more explanations that in areas that sunlight hasn't been put on, as to what these things are. And these, I mean, you look at knots, the knots technology on OT 3, 4, 5, and 7. It's one of these things where what you're dealing with in another term is you're looking at it. He looked at exorcism and went, okay, well, the Catholic Church, they believe this, they do things with this, so there's something more to this. And then what he ended up dabbling in before he got going in Dianetics back in the early 40s is he said, okay, there's definitely more to this. And then it came back up in 1951, 52 in the Milestone 1 lectures, once they had the e-meter. And now you could prove this. It wasn't just because somebody was dramatizing something from a particular entity that had latched onto them. And then he went in and looked at it some more on the OT levels and everything, another 10 years type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these little tags sticking out in all these different isms and ologies and entities and everything, and it's a culmination of all of these things that came up in different areas, and he looked at it from more of a scientific aspect instead of a philosophical or religious aspect, because Scientology
Yes.
is a science. It's a very methodical science, at least to me it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, when you're
Yeah.
using, a physical universe device like the e-meter, it because it's built on laws, that obviously means that it's scientific, if you will. And then through that, you go through the being and then the mind, and then obviously you get the spiritual stuff. And the reason why I feel like this is important is because, well, take me, for example. For a while, before Scientology, I was in rough shape and things weren't going right. Ethics were out, all of that stuff. I didn't really even know much about ethics other than, well, you have to be good in order to go into heaven, kind of a thing. That was the limitation. But then I started, having a more self-determined outlook on ethics. And while that was happening and getting auditing and stuff, things were going right. And it wasn't just because I was making them go right in the physical universe. It was, I'd be like, okay, I want to do this or I want that. And things would just align themselves, not necessarily by my power or physical efforts, but something greater than that. And I feel like that is sort of, if you will, a magical thing. And that only really happens once you get up on the bridge and you take the time to get your ethics straight and stuff like that. Obviously, again, self-determinedly. Like I'm a big like I always say, if you're going to do ethics, do it self-determinedly or don't do it at all, because as soon as it feels other determined, somebody telling you what to do, it's going to put you at effect, and you don't want to be at effect. Ethics is cause.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I got off on a
Absolutely.
little bit of a tangent there.
Well, no, because LRH actually says it. When you talk about these miracles or these things magically or however out of the blue kind of happening, he actually says here, he says, when we say these things, we're talking about the second echelon of Scientology. And in this echelon, we can do many miraculous and wonderful things. We can do a lot of tricks.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
I hadn't heard
he
that
says
one
the
yet.
sky's the limit here. Yeah,
Wow.
the sky's the limit. And so I love that for me and my journey from ultra conservative Christianity to more metaphysical New Thought Christian, where now Jesus ain't coming to do nothing for you, right? Jesus ain't coming back on a cloud, on a Harley Davidson. It's like you get to the idea that I am the unfoldment of that Christos, of the anointing, of the anointed one. I am the
Yeah.
unfoldment of that. And so my journey, walking in Christ's footsteps, my journey is to unfold as that which I know myself to be, God's perfect idea of itself in me, right? And so I'm unfolding that. So I haven't had this idea of personal Lord and Savior kind of concept for many, many years of even in my Christian journey.
Yeah.
And because I always understood it as an allegorical narrative of unfoldment. The Christ story was an allegorical narrative of unfoldment. And so then going from that and discovering magic and mysticism and kind of going within to figure out who I am, who am I in all this, and then culminating all that into Scientology, it was like, where have you been all my life?
Right. Yeah.
it was like, yes, it took me 22 years to kind of find this. And then when it all made sense, it all made sense. And so that's what it's been for me.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like I said earlier, for me, I mean, I also delved into a bit of Buddhism as well. And I found that, the principles were a bit loose. But after learning about Scientology, like all of those things really expanded. So I totally feel you on that. Speaking of Buddhism, I wanted to touch on, because I know you and I both like this, the power of now and how that all
Mhm.
plays into this whole thing. So I'm going to start out with my experience. So immediately upon reading the book, I loved it. After the first page, I was just like, yeah, there's really something to this. And I was doing, practices in it, like how he says, you should just, like, instead of going into meditation like full on for 30 minutes to an hour, you just do it through, your day-to-day life. Like if you're standing waiting in a queue and all of that stuff. And
Mhm.
there were definitely moments where I was able to just be now. And there were moments when I was able to observe the thinker. So,
Yes.
and for anybody who hasn't read the book, basically there's you and then there's all your thoughts. So the thoughts are not you. And that's what he tries to get across. Obviously, there's several different elements in the book that he covers, but out of all of them, I think those, and also the way he says you should try not, or not even try not, you just don't resist things, and surrender. And I love how he ends the book with saying that if the final question in the book is, how do I know if I've surrendered? And he's like, well, when you no longer have to ask the question. I thought that was just like a bum moment.
Mhm.
So I really did enjoy it. And I think if I can liken it to anything in Scientology, it would probably be being here and being comfortable, as you find with, TRs. Um,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, and I'm not bashing Scientology at all in this regard, but I found the concept of being here and being comfortable a lot more difficult for me to grasp. I overthought it. I was overthinking it the whole time.
Mhm.
And we've got to remember that LRH didn't write like a lot about the TRs. He didn't write an entire book about the TRs like in The Power of Now. But when you read The Power of Now, I think it can actually complement what you already know in Scientology or what you're about to discover in terms of the TRs. Um, but being in the now was a lot easier for me to grasp than being here and being comfortable.
What? Yeah, I can understand that. I think that by the way, the book Power of Now is written by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
She, as we were talking about it, but I think that for me, when Eckhart Tolle would say stuff like "life is now," and there is never a time when your life is not right now, right?
Mm,
Nor will there ever be. Like understanding that, and then when LRH says, I think he says something about life is now. What was it? The um, code of honor and the code of honor.
mm,
And he's like your life is now. Like
yeah.
so what we're seeing is this overlap or this amalgama of spiritual truths that however they've been disseminated for people where they are. And I say all the time, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
And if that teacher starts out as the Bible, okay, well,
Yeah.
let's see what that got. And then if that teacher goes into True Magic by Amber Cape, which is an amazing book, that it goes into that. And if it goes into Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, it goes into that. The Kabbalion, which is the Hermetic principles, Hermetic laws. And then if you go and pick up Dianetics, if you pick up some of LRH's higher books and the basics books, like that really is a very, in my opinion, a healthy journey of spirituality that again culminates with what we have as the best workable technology on planet Earth right now that can really help people if they understand it, clear your words. Hello.
Yeah.
Please clear your
Yeah.
words, as it will cause you not to want to look into it more.
Hmm.
But definitely clear your words. And then lastly, use it.
Yeah.
And if you use this text, if you use what LRH has given us, you can put this stuff into practice in your life, and you can start to think with it, like you were saying earlier, Jonathan. Like when I say Bible, I think with Bible. I
Hmm.
think with LRH. I think with this stuff, and then what ends up happening is I now am able to put these principles into action in my life, and that's what's made my life, in my opinion, to be very, very workable because I now know what I'm doing as I'm doing it. It's not figure. It's not, oh, that triggered me. No, I
Yeah.
know. Oh, I know what that is. I know exactly what that is. Nope, not on my watch. You ain't gonna make me angry. Nope. I'm
Yeah.
choosing a different feeling right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's definitely true that they sort of expand on each other. And well, if something is true in one area and it's true in another, especially if like, with Scientology, we're dealing with knowingness, not belief. And if you know that that stuff is true, and then you take that and look at, the other practices, you're like, hey, but this is basically the same thing, just worded differently. So, for example, with being here, being comfortable versus being in the now, with being here and being comfortable, it's the same thing. It's really just, in my understanding, being here was positioned in space instead of being in the now, position in time, kind of a thing. But if you can just, I guess, be
I see what you're
now and
saying. Yeah.
present, and you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, we do say in Scientology, come up to present time.
Present time. Yes.
So like
Yeah, we do
so
that a
so
lot.
there is a consideration even in Scientology of being in the now. We just
Yeah.
call it present time.
And I'm pretty sure that LRH meant, just be here in space, time, energy, whatever, and be comfortable. It's just my limited understanding at that point in time was, I guess, position in space. Like, just, ignore the itchies, ignore the fact that when you're looking at somebody, your eyes are going squint, that kind of thing.
Oh my God, you got it. This is so good. Because Eckhart Tolle says, as soon as you honor the present moment, all unhappiness and struggle dissolve,
Yeah.
emphasizing the transformative power of living in the now.
Yeah.
Come up to the present time.
Exactly.
And you be here and be comfortable. TR0, 100%. You do TR0 in your life, no matter what's going on.
Yeah.
You can confront it, you can face it, and you can deal with it. And if something's turning on, you acknowledge it and you let it turn off. You let it flatten out.
Yeah.
It happens.
And imagine
Something
the
will turn
kind
on.
of,
That little tickle in your leg, it's gonna tickle. But
yeah.
you let it go. And that and
Exactly.
that hurt.
Don't
Let me be
resist.
more clear. And that hurt in your heart, it's gonna turn on.
Yeah.
But you don't respond to that. You don't succumb to that.
Yeah.
You stay in TR0 and you let it flatten out.
Yeah.
Got it.
And imagine how powerful you could be if you could just
Got
be
the Holy
like that
Ghost.
100% all the time.
Yes.
I mean, a large part of a lot of people's problems, including my own, is emotional dysregulation. And so, if you're being here and being comfortable and you're being in the now, you don't have all of those, uh, like if somebody has to tell you something and it's something that you don't necessarily like, instead of resisting, you just surrender and being like, okay, that's your viewpoint. I do not have to lower my tone for that viewpoint. I can just, be here, be comfortable with it. Like in bull baiting, for example.
Yes. Cool, girl. When you do those TRs and that joint, like you can feel yourself wanting to slap down to somebody.
Yeah.
And yet you gotta keep your TRs
Yeah.
in.
I mean,
So this is
I have tested John's patience a lot in when he's auditing me and stuff. And he's just got to sit there, take it, and be like,
yeah.
his tears are pretty good. Um, I remember one day, I was just like, I never thought that I would ever want to leave an auditing chair, but that day I wanted to put down the cans. I was so furious with him because he was touching on something that I just didn't want to confront at all. But thankfully it all went smooth. I came back, well, I sat down, sorry, and it all went okay. But it would be miraculous if those kinds of things didn't affect us as much as they do, if we could just be in the now and that was it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is I think has been a really well-rounded discussion. And of course, as you go back and watch and listen to all these other podcasts, you'll definitely see how ALGP and how independent Scientology really sticks to the truth and the tech as it is written, as LRH gave it to us. And so having the tech uncompromised, unfiltered, if that makes sense. But having the text in that way and the data in that way, it really helps us to know what we're talking about when we're doing the auditing, when we're in session, when we're, doing your grades or you're doing your, L11, which is what I'm rocking with. Like when you're in this stuff and you see how far you can go, it's quite an adventure. And that's why, to me, Scientology is the end all to be all at this point in my journey of self-discovery.
Absolutely. And I just want to add that I actually had a realization while we were talking, and this is kind of proof in the pudding, because before we went on, I didn't really know how I was going to present this, because I was like conflicted between the different data. But then as we were going along, because and here's the thing, it was all in my head. And so I didn't have a chance to have a terminal to speak about this. Like there was a confusion about, what's happening, what had happened, why this stuff didn't necessarily work. And then by having a terminal, or in this case, two terminals, instead of it being my head, as obviously Scientology says, don't keep it in your head, talk to some, well, it doesn't say talk, but having a terminal is important. And the proof is that I had the realization that it's not that it's all practices that are confusing. It's just if there's just a certain type, and I'm going to say that type is anything that makes you feel like a victim. So with psychotherapy, with shadow work, with Christianity, anything that's other determined. Because here's the thing, when you are in that victim mentality, it is completely other determined. You're not being self-determined. So yeah, there's my win for the day.
I love it. And I want to give that code of honor thing that I mentioned earlier. I wanted to give it exactly as LRH wrote it. Code of honor number 11. It says, "Never regret yesterday. Life is in you today, and you make your tomorrow."
Yeah,
LRH.
absolutely. Wonderful.
Well, on that note, folks, I hope this has been a enlightening compare and contrast on other practices compared to Scientology / independent Scientology. We'll be back next week with some more podcasts on a lot of various subjects, and we'll be plugging on through the month of January and February. We'll be back next week. Thanks for being here. Namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace.